Full disclosure, this is just a rant video. I'm not going to add any value, and there's likely not going to be some big aha moment for you. So if you want to click off, I completely understand. But this is just kind of me throwing some thoughts out, taking a few bullet points here and there when I've been creating the idea or thinking about the idea for this video, but I don't have a script that I'm following or anything like that. What I've been noticing over the last several years, and in particular in the last year or so, and it's actually been ramping up, and it's not just well, the job market is bad and all that kind of stuff, which obviously that plays a big role in it. But I think it's more existential than that. I think it comes down to a fundamental core human level of what it means to exist, especially in today's world with everything that's going on, both geopolitically. Of course, that trickles into the job market. And I think that there is a level of disenfranchisement, if that's even a word, that I've not seen before. Now, I've always been somebody who has kind of been, I'd say, a little negative toward careers and about the corporate world. And I decided when I started this channel several years ago that I wanted to try to make a difference, that my purpose was to try to give people the tools to start navigating through careers with more authority and conviction. And I've talked about that ad nauseum on this channel. Now, I've had a lot of ups and downs in my career, just like everybody else. Certainly have made my fair share of mistakes. In fact, a lot of the stuff that I get from my channel content comes from my own personal experience and or people that I actually know. But when I first started this channel, I did feel there's always been this negativity towards recruiters, towards human resources, towards corporations. And I get that. That comes with the kind of par for the course. And for the viewing audience, people who are watching this is a face that you can actually see to a nameless title, a recruiter, etc. So it's easy to beat up on me because I'm actually putting myself out there. Even though obviously I'm not the person who's rejecting you. I'm not the person who's going and doing all this recruiting. Right now, I'm actually not actively recruiting. I am focusing on this and some other business ventures. But up until pretty recently, I was a recruiter, an active recruiter doing active recruiting for a lot of different industries, a lot of different companies. And so I understand when people throw vitriol at me. It's kind of just par for the course. And generally, it doesn't really bother me all that much. And I would say that sentiment has always been there. And frankly, I've felt the same way about some recruiting and some job searches that I've had in my own past where, I sit there and I question their ability, their competency, how companies hire, how it's so broken. And so the whole channel kind of came, there's an element of negativity to the channel. And I understand that. Some people have told me that I'm too negative. And I really try to give a balance. I really try hard to give it a kind of a neutral, like I don't try to be overly positive. I don't try to be overly negative, but it's getting harder and harder to make content based on how careers have gone. That is not slanted toward the negative side of the spectrum. And the problem is, it's that companies have made it this way, and kind of boils down to this is where I'm concerned about where the job market is going, where careers are going. My whole goal in this whole channel was to try to give, again, people the power back in their career so they weren't just navigating it blindly, not knowing the rules. And in my case, I figured out a lot of the rules along the way. I saw behind the scenes. I saw how hiring managers worked. I saw how companies worked. And I would share these perspectives so that you could use it to your advantage. And what I've been noticing kind of overwhelmingly at times is no matter how positive the content that I make is, no matter how beneficial I feel the content is, the comments are overloaded with people who are just overly cynical and overly negative. And, sometimes I sit there and I go, and I think to myself, I see these comments come in and I just wonder, why is it that we have arrived at that point where nothing is good, everything is bad, and no matter how much reclaiming of control, people still look at the glass as half empty. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. The job market has been completely transformed, and not for the better, over the last 4 to 5 years as I've been working through this channel. It's never been necessarily a great career market for most people. Companies have always been quote unquote in control, and they're writing your paycheck for you. They're signing the check. They're always going to have some level of control over what you can do and how you can do it. But I do feel that there's a seismic shift or a fracturing, if you will, in careers around the time of the pandemic. So 2020. Careers have never really felt the same since. And it's just been one uppercut after another for the job seeker. And these companies basically have become, I might say the term soulless, and I say that kind of loosely because it's always the corporation is a soulless. It's an entity. It's an entity that's only purpose is to maximize shareholder value and drive profits, and that's inherently against what the human element of it, the employee's purpose is, because the employee is the biggest expense. The benefits costs, the training costs, dealing with employee relations issues, all of that stuff. That's the biggest expense that a company has. So there's an inherent butting of heads there, and that will probably never change. But I feel that because careers have become, or should say corporations, because corporations have become so much more transactional and short-cycled, this has only sped up this rapid de-evolution of careers and having a successful career. Like, what's the definition of a successful career? Used to be back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even 80s, we were able to work long, successful careers, wouldn't have to worry about too many unplanned disruptions, and you could feasibly park your butt at a single company and work there for the majority of your career. And I have my parents, my friends' parents, people in my family. I've seen it. I've seen these people be able to work very long, successful careers without having a lot of career disruption. But ever since 2020, the idea of having a long, solid, stable career has basically been thrown out the window. Now companies are so short-sighted, they're only looking for the next cycle, the next earnings report to come out. And there is a sense that everything is temporary. And I even think it's the people who come into these roles. I mean, you look at like CEOs and how long they last in these organizations, or, CHROs who come into these organizations, blow them all up, and then within 6 months, they're gone anyway. So they've left this wake of destruction behind them. They're off on a different opportunity. They got this golden parachute, and there's no accountability there. And that's just how corporations, it's become, it was always very sterile and very cold, but I think even more so now, it's very cold, calculating, and almost it's like a ruthlessness. And I just don't see this ending. In fact, it's even speeding up. It used to be, layoff cycles, you used to have it once every 10 years or so. Major event would happen and there would be some major layoff. But now it's starting to become much more a quick cycle. So, every 2 to 3 years now, we're seeing major layoffs. And in fact, I think it's going to continue to shorten. And so these employees who got laid off, let's say that the people in 2020 who got laid off, it took them let's say a year to get back to work. In some cases, that was probably the worst job market year I've ever experienced. I think the overall market is as bad as it's ever been right now. But that was the first time, like 1 year segment, that was probably the worst. Those people finally get back to work in 2021, the boom, the employment boom, and we all think it's over. We're gonna finally have some power, but obviously that didn't last very long. It was the whiplash effect of getting back. The economy is starting to run again, and people found themselves unemployed just as fast as they found themselves employed. So people who were finally getting back to work have not been able to maintain any semblance of upward mobility in their career. So it's like every single time they take a step up the ladder, they get beaten down 2 or 3 rungs. And then they start finally moving up the ladder again. They get beaten down another 2 rungs. And if you go through several years of that, it's no wonder that so many people are disenfranchised. And frankly, it's getting harder and harder for me to justify anything related to corporations and how they behave. It's almost like a psychotic or sociopathic behavior. These corporations are out of control. There's absolutely no guide rails. There is no accountability. and they can treat people any way they want. They just look at the interview process. People are asked to jump through hoop after hoop, to go through round after round of interviewing, only to get ghosted. Or if you're lucky enough to get a job offer, you've got to literally fight tooth and nail just to get a reasonable offer. And then good luck keeping that job. In some cases, they're laying people or rescinding offers before the person even starts. So I know some anecdotal stories where people are moving across the country to take a job. They quit their previous job, they get a new job, and before they even start, they get the offer rescinded. Oh, there's been a change of plans. We're no longer emphasizing this role. And it's like there's no recourse for that person who has now been basically completely uprooted, and they've basically ruined their career, and they can just walk away and say, yeah, sorry, them's the breaks. It's the same thing. If you finally get a job, you can't necessarily rest on your laurels and say, hey, I finally arrived, everything's back to normal, because 6 months later, there's going to be another round of layoffs that you got to worry about. Am I going to get caught up in this one? And I've known people that have had very long, successful careers up until 2020 that suddenly every successive job they've had since then, they're lasting 6 months to a year. And then the irony of this is it's not even their fault. These companies just have this short cycle. You know, they hire a whole bunch of people, they get the project out the door, suddenly things aren't going so well. They decide to lay off that entire staff. And it's not the person's fault. It's the company, it's the management, it's the senior leadership, really. It's not even the management, it's the senior leadership that has this short-sightedness, and there's no accountability. And then who is the one who loses the most? It's the employee. Now they've got a job hopping resume. Now those same employers that laid them off are then judging them, saying, you don't seem like you can keep a job. And it's just, the irony of it is just, it's so rich and thick, and it's really hard to justify it. And, you know, from my perspective as a career strategist, as a corporate recruiter, trying to give advice on how to handle this stuff, it's getting harder and harder to justify the behavior. It's like, how do you manage psychotic behavior? Somebody is completely off the rails. There's no reasoning with them. They are seeing things from a certain lens that is not reasonable. And that's what a lot of these corporations are doing. You're essentially dealing with a sociopathic environment, careers in general. And it's not just one employer. It's pretty much the whole gamut. And again, there's no recourse. They can lay off all these people. And what happens? The stock price jumps. The market rewards them for this type of behavior. And these CEOs can take their golden parachute and go to the next one and go to the next one and go to the next one. And it doesn't matter. And I increasingly been thinking about, what's the future of work? The future of work, to me, is looking as bleak as it ever has. And especially when you look at this drive for AI. And I know I've talked about it on my channel. I've kind of been warning people of the impact of AI. And I think a lot of people have this view of AI as, well, it's not capable. It's not going to replace me. It still has a lot of issues. There's no way that you're going to be able to fully replace the workforce. And to an extent, I agree. There is going to be some need for people to strategize where the AI can do all the kind of the heavy lifting below it. But the way that the companies are pushing for AI and implementing it in every facet of every product that's out there, including search engines, including the platforms that you consume your content on, there is no facet of life that isn't being touched by AI. And to me, like, I do see there being a value. You know, I use ChatGPT to help with researching things, and, you know, there is some benefit to it. But what I'm seeing is increasingly that people are being very inauthentic, that these platforms are being filled with AI slop and fake videos. And pretty soon you're going to be watching, you know, YouTube and like TikTok and places like that, and you're going to be lucky if you can find actual authentic creator content. I'm just using creator content as one aspect, but look at your career, look at your industries. They are trying to use AI to augment and supplement everything. And if you don't think that it's going to replace jobs, I think you're being extremely naive. And it's maybe not today, but look at where things were just a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 4 years ago. What are jobs going to look like in 5 years from now, 10 years from now? The cycle of evolution is at a staggering pace. And that's what scares me the most. And it's not that I'm scared of AI necessarily, but what I'm scared of is the impact on people's careers and the number of people who are likely to be left behind. And this isn't necessarily like a Chicken Little Skies Falling AI video, but really it's kind of just looking at the bigger picture of careers. So you've got these companies that are laying people off, looking at only the next earnings cycle, They're not keeping people on long term. There's no such thing as long term jobs. They're replacing jobs with contracted positions. So they're taking a full time headcount and turning it into a part time contracted role so they can remove benefits. They're forcing people back into the offices. They're requiring entry level people to have lots of years of experience because they can. The job market is so bad that people are throwing resumes and there's no consequence. The company can hire people, they can lowball people because there's plenty of applicants. There's thousands of people applying from all over the globe, and especially for those remote jobs. Here's another thing that's happening too is the remote jobs are actually being offshored. So there is a shortage of remote jobs in the United States. But a lot of those remote jobs are being offshore because they can pay them less money to do the same work. So you've got this augmenting of the workplace, you've got this offshoring of the workforce, and you've got a lot of people who are feeling increasingly just disenfranchised. You're following all the rules. You're doing all the things that you should be doing. You're getting the education. There's not a direct correlation to that actually helping you. Just ask any entry-level person who's just graduated in the last year or two, how's their career going? How is getting started in your career really working out for you? Some people who have implemented strategy are doing decent, not gonna lie. But for the majority of people, starting your career off in a market like this is not normal. This is not how I started off my career. The job market and careers in general just feels overly dystopian right now, and I'm trying to find a positive pathway through it. The only thing that I've been able to find is reclaiming control in your career. And I use that term a lot. People kind of I think it goes over a lot of people's heads what that actually means, but trying to establish your own authority in your career and no longer relying on employers. And it doesn't mean being your own boss or starting your own company. That could be part of it, but that's not the focus of it. But really what the focus is taking proactive steps to be in the most advantageous position so that companies look at you as somebody of true desire that they want to hire, and then you can start to write the rules. It's kind of like flipping the script, and it's only a very small percentage of people who are able to actually do this successfully. And if you don't have a guide rail or a method or a map that you're following, it's going to be almost impossible for you to do it. Very few people have kind of figured out the secret behind it. And that's one of the reasons why I started this channel, is to really start to talk through what that is. But for the majority of people, there is a sense that there is no hope. And I see it. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. It's getting harder and harder for me to create content. It's getting harder and harder for me to ignore the negative sentiment of the workplace, because I get it. I understand where they're coming from, and companies are just not making it any easier. So I'm concerned about where things are heading. I'm concerned about what the next 5 to 10 to 20 years looks like in careers. I just don't see this as, unless something major happens and something major changes, the dystopian nature of where we're heading as a society, careers just being one component of it, the dystopian direction things are heading with automation, with AI, just in basically every facet of your life, it's starting to feel more and more like a Black Mirror episode. And if you haven't seen that show, you should check it out. It's kind of scary, but you should check it out. But anyway, that's kind of my rant for today. I don't really have anything else to add to it. Just kind of what I've been feeling and thinking as I'm working through content and trying to continue to find ways to add value. And, this video doesn't necessarily add value, just kind of more an observation. So I don't know. What do you think? Are you as concerned about where careers are headed as I am? And do you feel that there's a positive outcome to this in the long run? I think it's going to be very much a world of haves and have-nots in the next 10 years or so. And my intention, hopefully, is to be on the haves. And if you're watching this channel, hopefully that's your intention as well. I'll do my best to try to guide you there. But it just isn't feeling good to me right now. So that's all I got. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.